Okay, now we're going to do some quotes. It's from this book right here, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're on the letter B. We're going through it in alphabetical order. The first person is Julie Burchill. She's a little bit of a feminist lady writer. And I'm not a fan of feminism, but sometimes a couple good quotes come from them. So her first one is that the freedom women were supposed to have found in the 60s largely boiled down to easy contraception from the birth control pill and abortion. Those are things that make life easier for men, in fact. One thing I would say, I'm not going to get into feminism big right here, but I actually have read about feminism. It's much worse than people think. Feminism actually comes out of Satanism. If you look at the first so-called feminist, it was Mary Wollstonecraft, born in about 1759, and then her daughter, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, who was involved with Percy Bysshe Shelley, the Romantic poet, friend of Lord Byron. What you see is a pattern of free love, sex out of marriage, and then you often see illegitimate children, and you also see lots of abortion. There's always a whole bunch of dead babies all over the place once all this feminist stuff gets going. And then the thing that happened, it even became more and more removed from the idea of babies and abortions when it was sort of taken over by the communists after World War I. And what happened was they looked at society and said, how can we conquer this population and turn them into slaves? And what they realized was men are more objective, rational. They're not that emotional. They want something real if you're going to make a deal with them. Whereas women, you can trick women more easily, was the feeling of the Communist Party, with emotional appeals. And so they felt that the more you could feminize a society, the more weak you could make it and force them into slavery. So they decided that women would be a tool that they could use to feminize society. And I think that's partly why divorce is so unfair to the man, because it's an opportunity for the system to take power away from the man by taking as much money away from him as possible. Because one of the mottos of feminism is smash the patriarchy, smash the patriarchy. So they're constantly trying to do things to take away authority and power of men. And the Communist Party is pushing this 100% because it knows the weaker the influence of men gets in society, the more that society is easy to push into slavery. There's a lot of other things that go into that too. This is why there's so much promotion of promiscuity in the, let's say, the high schools, for example. I remember when I was in high school, we took a health class. We didn't learn almost anything at all useful. We put a banana on a condom. Okay, put a condom on a banana. Okay, it was when you talk about something with a kid, you get them to think about it. So if you're talking about that sort of thing with kids, you're making them think more about having sex. Okay. And nowadays, too, they ask the kids all kinds of questions. Have you ever experimented with marijuana or alcohol or smoking cigarettes or methamphetamine? And what they want to do is they want the kids to experiment with it. By talking about it, it gets the kids to think about it. And then the rest of the feminism stuff, things like Marcuse, things about Kinsey, things about all this LGBTQ and all this stuff is, I think one of the goals of communism is to break apart and destroy the Christian family, which is sort of, tends to be man runs the household to a large extent, and they sort of split their duties, the man and the woman. Anyways, all of this is not happening by accident. I think it's part of a big attempt to further diminish the masculinity of society. That's why you hear that label, toxic masculinity. But actually, it's noble masculinity that makes a society better. Is one of the most important things. I mean, if you go back and look at, what was the name of that French guy, Alex de Tocqueville, when he came and visited the United States, I think it was something like 1835 or something. He said the reason America was good is because the women were so good. They were so religious, so Christian, and they ran the family so well. Back in the 1800s, women had a lot of babies. Nowadays they don't want to have much babies. They want to be like men, kind of work, 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 work. But then they get older and they realize, gee, they wish they had more kids. Because also what I see happen to a woman is, it'll come from this next line. Okay, so Julie Burchill continues. Her next line is, it has been said that a pretty face is a passport. It's not. It's a visa, and it runs out fast. And what I mean by that is, my mom was really pretty when she was young, but as time went by, the reason why she had such authority, and she was the great matriarch of the whole family, was because right from the beginning, she had always been running everything social for the family, inviting all the cousins and the friends and everybody over. So like Mother's Day at our house, there were like 100 people. And what I mean by that is she was the big celebrity. She was the matriarch, big shot of the whole family. Everything revolved around her. And I can tell you, after she died, the whole family fell apart because she ran everything. And there was no other woman from the younger generation to sort of step up and run the family. And what I saw was my mom did not work. She didn't have to. My dad made plenty of money, and she just did whatever she wanted. She liked being a star at the tennis club. She liked being on the board of directors for an orphanage, being a minister of care with the church, being a tour guide at the Art Institute, a tour guide at the Frank Lloyd Wright Studio. Anyways, so I say all that because she was always happy when she'd be home when we would come home from school, and she's all happy. Everything was always happy and joyous and a lot of joking around. And what I see happen in the younger generation of women, it's not like that. Most of them work, and quite often not because they have to, but they think they should. Like my wife never had to work a day in her life. I told her, you're more than welcome to stay home. Let's have a bunch of kids. And she's like, no, I went to all the school. I'm going to go work. And then I said, well, work half time. And then you'll have some time for the family to help raise the kids. She's like, she did that for a little while, but she's pissed off. She only got paid a third instead of being paid a half. And that pissed her off, so she went back to work full time. My kids say that they weren't raised by their mother. They were raised by babysitters. Okay, so anyways, what I'm trying to say is, as a woman gets older, she'll start to realize that her great pride and joy typically is her children, her family. And what I mean by that is, my mom was like this giant matriarch that hundreds of people knew her and admired her, and she was the center of everything, whereas all these wives now, they're really kind of like irrelevant. What I mean by that is they work. They didn't really have much time for their family. They didn't do much on Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving. They sort of did little as possible to get by. And so there's not much family connectiveness between all the cousins. None of them are a matriarch. Some of them are divorced and they don't speak to each other and stuff. So what I'm saying is they all kind of didn't do much. None of them is interesting even. And I think that's unfortunate. What I'm trying to say is they've been sold this big lie that your job matters. You could be fired in 2 seconds. You think the job cares about these women? They'll fire them, replace them the next day. Versus to their kids, their families are the center of everything potentially. So what I'm saying is I think women have been sold a big lie with this feminism stuff. Telling them they should be like a man. What makes them unique is that they're a woman. And, and in an old age, my mom just kept going up in value, so to speak, as being the big queen of the whole family. Whereas these other women, we don't ever think about them or barely talk to them or look at my wife. All her children are pissed off at her. Her friends are saying she's a jerk and an idiot. It's like it's the opposite of how things were with my mother. Okay, the next one is David Burns. He lived from 1942 onward. He became famous as the popularizer of cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. It was sort of also developed by Aaron Beck. His book was Feeling Good. It was a big bestseller. Some recommended it as treatment, and they called it bibliotherapy, therapy with a book. And so here's a quote by David Burns. Cognitive therapy is based on the idea that when you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel and behave. So it's a little bit like Shakespeare, Nothing is either bad or good, but thinking makes it so. Okay, his next statement is, what most people really want is to be listened to, respected, and understood. The moment people see that they are being understood, they become more motivated to understand your point of view. There is a difference between a technician and a healer. So, cognitive behavioral therapy has some benefit to some extent. You help the person to see other sides of an issue and maybe find an attitude of gratitude to deal with the situation better. So it does have value. But you can also run into trouble like the Jonathan Swift quote of, it's hard to reason somebody out of something that they weren't reasoned into. If it's an emotional thing or, maybe it is a mental illness. But, it depends. I think the whole concept of mental illness is totally overrated. Like Thomas Schaas had said, mental illness is mostly a myth, a way to put, derogatory labels on people so you can sell them drugs. Okay, but anyways, that's David Burns in the famous Cognitive Behavioral Therapy book. Okay, the next one is Robert Burns, and this will be the last person for the quotes today. He lived from 1759 to 1796, and some say he's the most popular of all the men from Scotland who ever lived. And he certainly is a pretty nice poet. Okay, some of his best-known stuff are Auld Lang Syne. He was very popular with the ladies, and I think he had a whole bunch of illegitimate kids, like a big famous rock star. So everybody knows the song, Should Old Acquaintance Be Forgot and Never Brought to Mind? Okay, that's another famous one. And he just has a whole bunch of nice poems. You could see how it would be fun to hear him talk and stuff. And he wasn't that educated. He just had a talent for it. The upright, honest-hearted man who strives to do the best he can, the friend of man, the friend of truth, the friend of age, the guide of youth. If there's another world, he lives in bliss. And if there is none, he made the best of this. So he does that over and over again, just hits it right. Okay, another one. Oh, here's a good one. This one totally relates to me and my family. Robert Burns says, a woman can make an average man great and can make a great man average. Yeah, that's what I say about my father. Because my mom built my father up. She was always telling us, oh, your father's so good. Your father's so smart. Your father works so hard. Be quiet. Don't wake up your father. He has to go to work early in the morning. He reads so much. She was always building up my dad. And that was nice. And we admired him as a kid. He was our role model, our hero. Versus, my wife, I'm a great man, okay? My wife's always like trying to drag me down, so jealous and petty. And it's too bad because, like I said, if she'd have stayed home and not worked, I would have been able to keep my other job and make twice as much money, okay? We would have been far richer. But instead, because she had to do all these petty things, it lost millions of dollars for us. It's just stupid. Okay, the next one is Robert Burns. To see her is to love her, and to love her but forever. For nature made her what she is, and it never made another. Okay, all right. And then I like Red, Red Rose here. My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. How fair thou art, my bonny lass, and so deep in love am I, that I will love thee still, my dear, till all the sea's gone dry. Till all the sea's gone dry and the rocks melt with the sun. I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my love, and fare thee well a while, and I will come again, though it were 10,000 mile. It's just beautiful. He's perfect. Bobby Burns. Okay, my heart is in the highlands, my heart is not here. My heart is in the highlands a chasing the deer and following the roe. My heart is in the highlands wherever I go. And then one thing you notice when you look through Robert Burns' poetry, you see lots of lines that became titles for books and movies. As Tammy glowered, amazed and curious, the mirth and fun grew fast and furious. So Fast and Furious, that's a book title there. Oh, wad some power to gifty gie us to see ourselves as others see us. Somebody with a good Scottish accent could really read this stuff well. And here it is, again, the best laid plans of mice and men gone off to gley. So there it is from the book of Mice and Men, Steinbeck, okay. Give me the spark of nature's fire. That's the learning I desire. So anyways, the great Robert Burns. That's it for today. Hope that was interesting.